At the age of 23, 6 foot tall, blonde-haired, and blue-eyed, Andrew Schreiber had reason to be pleased with his life. He was always an outdoors type, so his job as assistant baseball coach at Newman University in Wichita, Kansas, suited him perfectly. He said he was a baseball enthusiast since he could walk. "I usually play catcher, so I can be involved in every play, every pitch." When he was not catching a ball on a diamond field, he was often putting one on a golf course. On the chilly night of December 8, 2000, the strapping bachelor feared his life would come to an abrupt end. He was at a Come-and-Go convenience store when 2 young black men approached him and brandished a gun. They ordered him into his own car. As his heart hammered, the men told him to drive to various ATMs where they forced him to withdraw $800. Later, Schreiber said, "I was just hoping if I did what they said, they'd let me live." They did. The assailants released him in a field, physically unharmed but badly shaken. They shot out the tires of his vehicle, then jumped in another car and sped away. Schreiber had no way of knowing that he was the first victim in a crime spree of escalating violence that would culminate in a night of grotesque violence aptly called the Wichita Horror. The next victim of that crime spree was fair-skinned, bespectacled, and red-haired Ann Walenta. A youthful-looking 55-year-old, she was a cellist and librarian with the Wichita Symphony Orchestra. As orchestra librarian, she was responsible for ordering and keeping track of its music. Classical music was the great love of Walenta's life, coming just after her husband and 2 grown children. It was a love she enjoyed bringing to others, which was one reason she worked for a group that taught classical music to young black people. Walenta and her husband lived in a comfortable single-story dwelling in a quiet upscale neighborhood, the kind people move to hoping to avoid crime. At about 9:30 p.m. on the cold, dry night of December 11, she returned home after a rehearsal with the Wichita Symphony Orchestra and parked her sport utility vehicle in front of her house. A man approached her. "I need some help," he said. Then he pulled a gun and ordered, "Don't move the car." The panicked woman started to drive away, but gunfire shattered the glass of the car window and ripped through her body. Severely wounded but still conscious, she pressed her car's horn. Its incessant blare drew the attention of a neighbor who called 911. Walenta survived for several days. She recovered consciousness and spoke with police from her hospital bed before dying of her injuries. While she was still clinging to life, her murderers would commit an even greater outrage. It was snowing on the night of December 14, 2000, when 25-year-old schoolteacher Holly Glover slid behind the wheel of her red Toyota Paseo. Her dear schnauzer, Nicky, sat beside her on the passenger seat. Holly Glover looked forward to a pleasant evening with close friends and a night with the man she loved. That man was Jason Befort, 26, who taught science at Augusta High School and coached the boys' junior varsity basketball team. He was a popular teacher with a flamboyant streak expressed in the bright blue shoes he habitually wore. Befort shared a triplex with 2 other young men, Brad Heyka, 27, and Aaron Sander, 29. Heyka worked for petroleum and chemical conglomerate Koch Industries, where he was a valued employee thought to have a bright future. The chubby man with the winning smile and lively sense of humor earned 3 promotions in as many years. Sander was a slender, fresh-faced man who looked younger than his years. A devout Roman Catholic, he recently quit Koch Industries because he felt called to the priesthood. Holly Glover arrived at her East Birchwood Drive home at about 8:30 p.m. Having her own key, she let herself inside the condominium. She saw Heyka and Sander, but not Befort. First Heather Muller, 25, then Befort, joined the group. Muller was a pretty woman who wore her light brown hair in a page boy and attended graduate school at Wichita State University. She and Sander dated, drawn to each other in part because of their shared commitment to the Roman Catholic Church. That piety also led to their recent breakup as a couple, since Sander wanted to enter the priesthood. They remained close friends, and Muller was starting to feel that, like Sander, she might have a religious vocation and spoke of becoming a nun. Befort was in love with Holly and wanted to marry her but did not yet work up the nerve to pop the question. He recently bought an engagement ring for her and, at the same time, purchased a book on how to propose. The five friends watched TV, ate dinner, and made conversation before heading off to their various beds. Befort and Holly were snuggling together under the sheets when the porch light suddenly came on. "Don't tell me I have to get up and turn off the light again," Befort said irritably. Holly Glover heard Sander talking with someone. The voices were muffled, so she assumed he was chatting with Muller. Holly turned to look at the digital clock and could not make it out completely because her boyfriend's head was in the way, but saw that it was sometime after 11 p.m. The bedroom was in semi-darkness, and the door burst open. Befort screamed. A tall black male pointing a gun stood in the doorway. He came into the room and tore the covers off the bed in which Holly and Jason were lying. Then a second black man, also armed with a gun, led Sander into the room. Since the room was cloaked in darkness, it was hard for Holly to physically differentiate between the intruders, except to see that the second man was not as tall or thickly built as the first. The shorter man shoved Sander onto the bed. Little Nicky growled and bared her teeth. "Grab your dog," one of the invaders said, "or we'll shoot her." "Who else is here?" the other man demanded. The terrified victims told of Heyka and Muller. One of the attackers headed down the stairs, while the other guarded Holly, Befort, and Sander. Clad in a white undershirt and a pair of boxers, Heyka was brought up into the bedroom. The intruder then left, retrieved a fully clothed Muller, and brought her to the room. "Get undressed," an intruder ordered. All five took their clothes off. The shorter man left his partner to guard the victims while he checked out the house. "Do you have any money?" the taller gunman asked the now naked group. Eager to cooperate, the desperate victims begged him to take their money. He asked who had ATM cards. Each victim raised a hand and told him the amount. Lights were switched on in the living room area. "Where's the safe?" the taller man asked. The men who lived there said there was no safe, and the robber replied, "In a house this nice, there has to be a safe." Muller and Holly Glover were ordered to go to the wet bar area located just outside Jason's bedroom. A hideous sexual orgy began. The women were commanded to perform oral sex and to play with each other. Then Muller was taken back to the bedroom, and Heyka ordered into the wet bar where he was told to have sexual intercourse with Holly Glover. Unable to get an erection, he forced his soft willy into her. The intruder expressed anger over Heyka's inability to get an erection. Heyka was told to stop, then led out of the room. Befort was brought into the wet bar and ordered to have intercourse with Holly. He pushed his flaccid organ into her. Then one of the intruders said, "That's his girl. Don't let him do it with his girl." He was returned to the bedroom, and Sander brought into the wet bar and told to have sex with Holly. "I can't do it," he pleaded. They told him he had to, and one of them hit him in the back of the head with the butt of his gun. Sander pushed his limp willy into Holly Glover and went through the motions of intercourse. The attackers directed Holly to leave the bar area. She accompanied them back to the bedroom. They ordered her into the closet where she joined Befort and Heyka. The victims were told not to speak. The folding doors of the closet were shut on three naked, frightened people. Muller and Sander were commanded to go to enter the wet bar. The intruders again ordered Sander to get an erection, and again he said he could not. He was told he had until 11:54 to get hard. The angry captor counted the minutes from 11:52 to 11:54. When the time was up, the man beat Sander, probably with a golf club from the residence. They took Sander to the closet and ordered Befort out of it. During that time, Holly could hear Muller moaning in pain. Some minutes passed and Befort was brought back to the closet. The intruders led Heyka out of the closet and ordered him to have intercourse with Muller. When he was brought back to the closet, the attackers told the victims they were going to ATM machines to withdraw funds. The victims were allowed out of the closet and told to get their car keys. In their confusion, Heyka, Holly, and Muller were unable to find them. Angered, the captors threatened to pop someone unless they located their keys. Befort found the keys to his silver Dodge Dakota truck atop the entertainment center in his room. Holly was able to see the intruders more clearly. The taller man wore a black coat she thought was made of leather. He also had black leather gloves on his hands. The shorter man had what she called poofy hair, styled in clumps. Befort was ordered to dress and accompany the taller man, while the shorter guy guarded the other four. The captor staying behind ordered Holly to prepare herself for sex. She complied. While she was on the floor, she heard him unzipping his pants and saw his gun lying about 2 feet away from her. Her hand itched to grab it, but she feared she would not be quick enough to get it before he could. Having little experience with firearms, she was uncertain she would even be able to shoot it. She thought he might take it away from her and kill her right then, so she did not take the chance. Holly Glover made up her mind that no matter what humiliations she had to endure, she was going to survive this ordeal, if it was at all possible. She was raped for about 5 minutes. Then he took her back to the closet and brought Muller out of it. The captives obeyed the order not to talk, but Sander could not help weeping as he heard Muller's pained moans. The taller man returned to the house with Befort in tow. Befort was ordered to strip again. In the closet, for the first time, a tearful Sander disobeyed the order not to speak to his fellow victims. He whispered to Heyka, "Do you think they're going to kill us?" Heyka did not respond. Heyka was allowed to dress, then taken from the home. When he was brought back, the taller man opened the closet door and asked, "Who's next?" Holly Glover stood up. Sander said, "No, I'll go." But he sat down when Holly continued making preparations for her trip. She was not permitted to get fully dressed, as the men were, but was allowed to put on only a sweater. She walked into the freezing night, naked from the waist down, her bare feet in the snow. The kidnapper escorted her to Befort's truck. Without speaking, he waved a gloved hand at the driver's side door to indicate that she should drive. She backed the truck out of the driveway and started driving slowly on the icy road. He asked her what his crime partner did with her, and she said he forced her to have sex with him. The captor laughed. "Did you like it?" he asked. "Yes," the victim replied, hoping not to anger him. He asked if she was ever with a black man before, and Holly said she was not. Then he asked if the rapist was better than her boyfriend was. Again she said, yes. Did she like being with a girl? He wanted to know. No, she replied. Baby, that's all right, he said. You ain't got to lie to me. Holly drove without speaking, then blurted out, Are you going to shoot us? No, he replied. You know you can have whatever you want, a desperate Holly continued. Please don't hurt us. Do you promise you're not going to shoot us or kill us? Yes, he said. She stopped the truck in front of a drive-up ATM machine, then rolled the window down on her side of the vehicle and started to use her card to withdraw money. The man put his gloved hand on her sex organ and rubbed. Startled, Holly Glover fell against the window. When she recovered her balance, she handed him the money. Then she drove in silence while he channel surfed the radio. Sometime during the trip, he told Holly he wished the two met under different circumstances. He said she was cute, and he thought the two of them would have hit it off. "Yeah, me too," she said. He swore when asking her what she meant. "Well, I'm not really having a good time," she explained honestly. Holly parked the truck in the driveway, and the pair walked back into the house. He ordered Sander to accompany him. Muller was sitting on the floor by the wet bar area. She was the only one of the victims who would not be taken to an ATM that night. Holly Glover did not make eye contact with Muller, but remembered her as looking spaced out and shocked. After the shorter captor walked Holly Glover to the closet and put her in with Heyka and Befort, he shut the door on the three. "What is Weller's?" he asked Muller. "It's whiskey," she replied. There were the sounds of a drink being made. The closet door opened, and the intruder asked if anyone wanted a drink. All three said they did not. He found a muzzle for Nicky in her basket under the sink, and threw that in the closet. Holly put it on her dog as he shut the closet door. There were sounds like a jug full of change being shaken. The captor asked, "Whose is this?" Muller told him it was probably Holly's, but she doesn't know about it yet. It was the diamond ring with which Befort planned to surprise her. Eventually, Sander and the other captor returned home. The taller captor summoned Holly from the closet and took her to the dining room. He noticed her earrings. "What are those?" he asked. "They're fake," she said. "You know you can have them if you want them." She pulled them off her ears. "No, I don't want them," he replied. She left the earrings on top of a stack of boxes containing Christmas decorations. Then he said something that scared her, causing her to jerk. "Relax," he said. "We're not going to shoot you yet." Terror seized her at this betrayal of the promise of not shooting them at all. He ordered her to get down on all fours. Then he raped her. After these rapes, the man made Holly accompany him to the bathroom, where his partner was raping Muller. "Hold on," the rapist in the bathroom said. "I'm not done." When he was done, he indicated with emotion that Holly should come into the bathroom with him. Then he raped her. For the first time, Holly noticed that the shorter man was wearing a black leather jacket, an orange and black FUBU sweater, jeans, and tan hiking boots. After this rape, Holly thought he might have removed a condom, although she never saw it, but only heard him flush the toilet. Then the women were directed to exit the bathroom and go to the area of the wet bar and sit on the floor. The invaders spoke softly between themselves. The taller man went downstairs, then came back up. The two whispered again, and Holly made out the words, "big screen." The captors ordered Muller and Holly, both of whom were shoeless and naked below the waist, to leave the house for the garage. There they were told to get into the trunk of Sander's Honda Accord. The nude male victims were brought out and also ordered into the small trunk, but not all five would fit. The attackers told the men to get into the trunk and the women into the back seat of the car. Muller looked at Holly and said, "I wonder how long they can last in a trunk." The garage door opened and the criminals talked with each other. The taller man told Holly to get out of Sander's car and accompany him to Befort's truck. The shorter man got into the driver's seat of Sander's vehicle. After the taller kidnapper drove for a while, Holly asked him where they were going. He replied that they wanted to drop the victims off, away from either the attacker's car or their own cars. Eventually, both kidnappers parked in a snow-covered soccer field. The trunk of the Honda Accord was opened. Befort, Sander, and Heyka were told to kneel in front of the car. Panicked, Holly looked at Muller and cried, "They're going to shoot us!" Both women were commanded to kneel beside the men. A gun fired and Sander begged, "Please, no sir, please." The gun fired again, and Holly felt a bullet slam into her head. She remembered that her mind went kind of grey with white like stars, but she was not knocked unconscious. Someone kicked her from behind, and she fell forward. She lay in the snow, pretending to be dead, in the hope that they would not hurt her any more. The truck started and ran over the victims. Holly suffered its terrible impact, but still did not lose consciousness. Then she heard the truck start yet again, and believed from the way the sound travelled that it was leaving the area. She turned her head slightly and saw that she was correct. Still lying in the snow, the wounded woman called out the names of her lover and her friends. But no one answered. Holly waited until she could no longer make out the truck's headlights. Then she got up to examine the other victims who lay exposed and face down in the snow. Befort was next to her. She rolled his naked and battered body over. This was the man she loved, the man she knew loved her. He wanted to marry her, but did not get the chance to slip the engagement ring on her finger. Blood flowed from his head and eyes. Maybe he was still alive. Shivering and near naked, Holly removed her sweater, the only garment she had on, and tied it around his head to stop the bleeding. She went to Heyka, but soon realized there was not much she could do to help while she was there. Seeing lights to the west a ways off, she thought the building that had them was like some sort of farming type thing, and believed it might not have a phone. Looking toward the highway, she saw a home with Christmas lights on. As she raced toward the Christmas lights, she saw car headlights and immediately dove into the frigid blanket of snow because she feared it might be the attackers. Every time she saw headlights, she flung herself to the ground, waited, then got back up to run towards those beckoning lights. Holly got to a fence and climbed over it. She crossed a highway that was almost empty due to the hour. Then she climbed over another fence and found herself on a dirt road that appeared to be behind a subdivision. She got to the back of a home, then raced around to the front door and repeatedly rang the doorbell and pounded on the door. She ran a mile. As a child, Holly was nicknamed Tuffy by her playmates. She lived up to that name. The owners of the home, a man and a woman, peeked out a window to see a shivering, bleeding, naked woman on their porch. They opened the door and let her inside, then bundled her up in blankets. "Call 911, Holly exclaimed. The man made the call. First he tried to tell the police emergency operator what Holly told him. Then he handed her the phone. Somehow, Holly was able to make herself speak clearly and calmly as she directed the police to the soccer field. She hoped that Befort might still be alive. He was not. Holly's hopes were dashed and her heart broken when told that the man she loved and 3 people dear to her were found dead. Police believe that while Holly was making her way painfully through the snow, the attackers returned to the Birchwood Drive house to steal more items. They also beat and stabbed Holly's muzzled dog Nicky to death. Wichita TV stations filled with stories of the grisly quadruple homicide. One of those news reports led to the first break in the case. On the morning after the slayings, Christian Taylor watched a broadcast on which he heard a description of Jason Befort's truck. Taylor believed a truck he saw parked at his apartment complex could be Jason's and went to a police substation to report his suspicion. Police rushed to the apartment complex, where they identified the truck in question as Jason's. Another resident of that same apartment complex, Riwa Obel Nsangalufu, flagged down some police officers to tell them he helped a man carry a large-screen TV to an apartment. He pointed them to that second-story apartment. Police swooped down on that apartment, then knocked on the door. The tall black man inside it went onto the porch and put a leg up on the railing as if to jump from it. However, he saw that it was surrounded by law enforcement and went back inside. Stephanie Donnelly, his pretty, white, dark-haired girlfriend, opened the door. Police entered, clapped the handcuffs on the suspect's wrists, and read him his rights. He was Reginald Carr, 22, from Dodge City. Accompanied by his younger brother, Jonathan, 20, he recently arrived in Wichita. The elder Carr had an extensive arrest record, while the younger had a less serious one. Both only worked intermittently at legitimate jobs. News of Reginald's arrest was broadcast on TV that afternoon. To one of those watching, Andrew Schreiber, that face was sickeningly familiar. Schreiber phoned police to say he thought Reginald was one of the men who robbed him. Authorities believed Reginald was the man described by Holly as the taller and heavier of the two attackers. Then police got their second big break. Toni Green was the mother of Tronda Adams, a young woman Jonathan Carr courted for about a week. That morning did not start out well for Green. At her job as a home health care professional, she felt queasy and left. But when she got home, she recovered enough to do a bit of housekeeping. Soon she had an eerie sense about the man sleeping on her couch. The news description of a suspect in a mass murder sounded awfully like him. She picked up Jonathan's leather jacket and found a little jewelry box with a diamond ring in it. Green knew it could not be for her daughter whom Jonathan just met. News reports said the robbers at the multiple homicides stole the diamond ring. Green also remembered that authorities were looking for a Plymouth that figured in the crimes. Her daughter's new boyfriend had parked a white Plymouth in front of her home. It had to be the same man, Green decided. She whispered these fears to her daughter and told her to grab the niece who was staying with them and get out of the house. Since snow was on the ground, Adams wanted to get her shoes first. "You can leave without your shoes," a frantic Green urged. "Let's go." As they crossed the street, Green called 911 on her cell phone. "The guy you're looking for is at my house," she told the operator. The three females ran to the home of Daniel Buggs across the street. When Green, Adams, and the niece got there, they turned around to see Jonathan Carr standing on Green's porch in jeans and a t-shirt. He ran. Police were on the scene almost immediately and gave chase. They caught up with him 2 blocks from Green's home, hiding between a house's storm door and front door. The arresting officers found over $1,000 in cash on him. He lost a shoe while running. At the time of the Carr's arrest, Ann Walenta was still alive in the hospital. Police showed her a photographic lineup that included the Carr brothers. The dying woman picked out Reginald as the man who shot her. She pointed to another man who rang a bell of familiarity. He was not Jonathan, but a man in prison at the time. With the Carr brothers in custody, authorities secured a search warrant for DNA testing. A nurse took samples of hair, blood, and saliva. As Jonathan Carr awaited the sampling, he spoke to homicide detective Kelly Otis. Jonathan apparently remembered the December 7, 2000 case of another Wichita quadruple murder in which 4 teenagers were shot and 2 men arrested for those crimes. Both victims and suspects were black. "What happened to those boys who shot those kids?" Jonathan asked. "They've been charged with capital murder," Otis replied. "What's capital murder?" "Well, anyone convicted of capital murder," Otis explained, "can get the death penalty." "How's that done?" Jonathan queried. "Lethal injection," the detective said. There was a long pause. Then Jonathan asked, "Do you feel anything from that?" "We've never been able to ask anyone," Otis replied. Wichita was in torment. In the space of a week, the city was the scene of 2 unrelated quadruple murders. Although suspects in both mass slayings were in custody, purchases of guns, locks, and security systems skyrocketed. A fierce debate raged in the media and among the citizenry about the motive for the Wichita horror. Rick Thames, editor of the Wichita Eagle, said, "It was a shocking crime because of the apparent randomness of it." Others argued that the crime was not random, but racist. They blasted the decision of Sedgwick County District Attorney Nola Falston not to treat it as a hate crime. She contended that there was no evidence race was the motive. No racial slurs were made against any of the victims. Falston maintained that robbery was at the root of these crimes. Kansas does not have a hate crime statute on the books. However, it does have a special penalty provision allowing increased sentences for crimes motivated by racial hatred. On many other grounds, but not that one, the prosecution sought the death penalty against the Carrs. Some observers protested that if a similar outrage was perpetrated against blacks by whites, it would have been assumed to be racist. The question asked of Holly about whether she previously had sex with a black man allegedly suggested that race was on his mind. Sadly, white racists attempted to foment hatred because of this case. In the aftermath of the slayings, online white supremacist and separatist groups put up web pages detailing the offences and decrying what they saw as the media's double standard in giving them relatively little attention. Reginald and Jonathan were charged with 113 crimes, including 5 counts of capital murder and multiple counts of rape and robbery. They were also charged with animal cruelty. Judge Paul Clark presided over the trial, and Chief Deputy District Attorney Kim Parker assisted Nola Falston in the prosecution. The lead attorney for Reginald Carr was Jay Greeno, who is often recognized by his neat ponytail of grey hair. A public defender for 10 years, he was in private practice since 1994. Val Wachtel was Greeno's co-counsel. Looking something like an odd couple, slim and clean-shaven, Mark Manor and heavyset and bearded Ron Evans were the lawyers for Jonathan Carr. Prosecution and defense questioned prospective jurors on a variety of issues, including feelings about race, the death penalty, and what they read and heard about the Wichita horror. The court excused 3 people because they were friends of one or more of the victims, and one man was excused because he strongly opposed the death penalty. 7 men and 5 women, 2 blacks and 10 whites, were impaneled as the jury. The group included an accountant, a machinist, an unemployed woman, an executive, a carpenter, and a nurse. Much of the testimony was grisly. The most riveting witness was undoubtedly Holly, who was called to the stand early in the trial. She described the ordeal of rape that she and her friends endured, the way they were robbed at ATMs, and finally the brutal shootings. Her testimony was much as it was in the preliminary hearing, with one vital exception. She identified Reginald Carr as the taller of the attackers, and indicated that her previous failure to identify him was due to his having shaved his head and donned glasses. Amazingly, evidence put on by Prosecutor Falston showed that Holly's life was saved by a hair clip. Experts testified that such a clip deflected the bullet from her head. Police Department crime scene investigator Barbara Seaweck told the court that Holly's dog Nicky was beaten, possibly with a golf club, and then stabbed by an ice pick. Trauma surgeon Scott Porter testified to the injuries suffered by Ann Walenta and used an anatomical mannequin to show the jury where she was shot. His unavoidably graphic description led to courtroom drama when a 51-year-old juror fainted. Dr. Porter left the stand to attend to the distressed juror. The juror soon regained consciousness but was taken to a hospital and examined. He made a full recovery and went back on the jury. Sedgwick County Coroner Mary Dudley testified about wounds suffered by the victims. She told the somber courtroom that Heather Muller and Aaron Sander were shot with the gun actually touching their heads. The shooter was slightly farther away from Brad Heyka and Jason Befort. The examination of Muller's body showed she was raped. All 3 male victims had bruises on their bodies. The injuries could have been made by a golf club like the one found in the home, or possibly by Jason's truck that went over their bodies before the attackers fled the scene. On cross-examination, Jonathan's attorney, Mark Munner, asked if the distances between shooter and victim indicated that only one person did the killing. The coroner said she could not know that. Andrew Schreiber took the stand and told the jury how he was kidnapped, robbed, and then left in a field. He identified Reginald Carr as one of the 2 men who abducted him, but could not identify Jonathan Carr. Under cross-examination, Schreiber admitted that he was unable to identify either brother from a photo lineup soon after the events. The prosecutors put on many exhibits and called numerous witnesses to physically link the Carrs to the crimes. They filled the courtroom with items belonging to the victims that were discovered in the apartment of Reginald Carr. Among them were 2 TVs including a big-screen Sony, a VCR, a CD player, and a tool set still in its package. Other stolen goods displayed were 3 remote controls, a cordless phone, power cords, drinking glasses, dress shoes, jackets, and coats. Relatives and friends of the victims testified that property displayed as that of the victims belonged to them. More technical evidence tied the brothers to the crimes. Forensic investigator Gary Miller, a florid man with a moustache and thinning hair, matched a shoe imprint on a windshield sunshade recovered from the Birchwood Drive garage floor to the shoe Jonathan lost while fleeing police. He also linked bullets from the gun used to shoot out the tires of Andrew Schreiber's car and kill Walenta, and cartridges found at the Birchwood Drive residence to a single gun by firing markings on bullets and cartridges. However, that gun was found discarded near an off-ramp a few blocks from the soccer field in which the victims were shot. Miller could not directly connect that firearm, a .380 caliber black Lawson pistol, to either Reginald or Jonathan. Sidney Schuler, a DNA expert for the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, testified that Jonathan Carr's DNA was found in a semen spot on the carpet of the Birchwood home, and on swabs taken from Holly. He said that blood spots found on Reginald's clothing were originally from Heather Muller. Reginald Carr's lawyers suggested the drops could have gotten there by his having rubbed against someone else, like Jonathan. Women who knew and cared about the Carrs took the stand against them. Tronda Adams testified she met Reginald and Jonathan the night Andrew Schreiber was kidnapped. Adams said she saw Jonathan Carr regularly. He visited her late December 11, 1 hour after Ann Walenta was shot, and handed Adams a black semi-automatic handgun which he kept until he retrieved it from her before December 14. When he took the gun back, he meticulously cleaned it. She said both brothers visited her on December 14, the night of the multiple homicides, and left around 9 p.m. Jonathan phoned her at 3:31 a.m. the next morning. Adam's mother, Toni Green, took the stand to recount how she started to suspect Jonathan after a news report and had her suspicions heightened by the discovery of the diamond ring. She told of herself, her daughter, and a niece racing across the street and making the 911 call that led to Jonathan's arrest. Reginald's girlfriend, Stephanie Donnelly, testified that she believed neither Reginald nor Jonathan was employed, but that Reginald was carrying large amounts of cash in early December 2000. He explained his sudden fortune by saying his pit bull was winning fights. She said she allowed the Carr brothers to borrow her Toyota Camry at about 5:30 p.m. on December 14th, and that they brought it back about 12 hours later. Her testimony connected Reginald to possessions stolen from the victims when she said he moved several items into her home, which were identified as belonging to them. The saddest part of her testimony linked Reginald and Holly in a sickeningly intimate way. A nurse, Donnelly said, recognized a sexually transmitted disease, genital warts, on her boyfriend's private parts early in their relationship. A medical expert would later testify that Holly came down with genital warts. On October the 25th, 2002, after putting 849 exhibits into evidence, the state rested its case against Jonathan and Reginald Carr. In the face of that mountain of evidence, the defense looked pitifully weak. Jonathan Carr's attorneys pinned his case on a ticket, an unused ticket. In his opening statement, Mark Manor told the jury that his client planned to catch a train at the time of the quadruple homicide, but got lost leaving Wichita. They entered that Amtrak train ticket dated the morning of the murders into evidence, then rested. Lawyers for Reginald Carr failed to get their major evidence admitted. Reginald wanted to take the stand to claim that Jonathan told him he was with a man who was tripping and shooting people. He also wanted to say he moved the loot from the robberies to help his brother, who was involved in the crimes along with the unknown partner. The judge ruled such testimony would be inadmissible hearsay. Val Wachtel tried to enter into evidence medical records he said would suggest that Ann Walenta died due to medical malpractice. The judge denied the request. Strangely, Reginald's attorneys had the police interview with Holly replayed for the jury. They did not give a reason, but observers believed they wished to emphasize the vagueness of her description of Reginald. Some of the jurors appeared distressed as the tape played. Holly left the courtroom. DNA expert Jamie Harmon took the stand for Reginald. She pointed out that since Reginald and Jonathan are brothers, DNA taken from Holly could not be said with certainty to come from both of them. On cross-examination, Harmon conceded that bloodstains on Reginald's clothes were those of Heather Muller. In closing argument, prosecutor Kim Parker told the jury, "This is a crime driven by greed and lust, by selfishness, and driven by twisted sexual gratification." In their summations, defense attorneys for each Carr brother pointed fingers at the other. Wachtel emphasized that there were inconsistencies in witness identification and noted that DNA at the crime scene belonged to Jonathan rather than Reginald. Mark Manor reminded that jury that both Ann Walenta and Andrew Schreiber identified Reginald but not Jonathan. Reginald was the one found with most of the belongings stolen that night, Manor elaborated. Reginald Carr was not alone, Manor said, but the evidence will show who was playing the lead role that night, directing things, taking things. Don't just go back there and check the box guilty on all counts. Please consider Jonathan's guilt and innocence separate from damning evidence against his brother Reginald. On November 4, 2002, the jury returned its verdicts. Jonathan and Reginald were convicted on almost all counts. Those convictions included multiple counts of capital murder, aggravated kidnapping, aggravated robbery, and rape. They were convicted of raping the male as well as the female victims. The jury did not forget little Nicky and found both brothers guilty of animal cruelty. Jonathan was acquitted on 4 counts of the kidnapping and robbery of Andrew Schreiber. The defendants looked stoical as the verdicts were read. Relatives of the victims seemed relieved. They hugged each other as well as people involved in the investigation and prosecution. Now the question for the jury to decide was what punishment to fix for the heinous crimes. Andrew Schreiber said, "There are constant reminders every day since I still live in Wichita." He was also troubled by an irrational but painfully real sense of survivor's guilt, since he lived and so many others did not. Holly's made her statement with a heartfelt eloquence. "One of my favorite 7-year-olds lost her uncle on the 15th. This year, when her mum asked her what she wanted for Christmas, she replied that she had wings, and if they were real, that she could fly to heaven, and she could see her Uncle Jason and her papa. I wish life were that simple. I wish that I could put on a pair of wings and that I could go see Jason. But we all know that these are wishes, and they are wishes that we have to wish because of two soulless monsters. Every day there is a memory or a scar that reminds me of that night, she testified. I wake up in sweats from my nightmares. I pace at night because of noises that I think are somebody breaking into my house. And every morning I carefully blow dry my hair to cover up the spot that can no longer grow hair. I look at my knees and see the scars from the carpet burns that I got from the rape, and in the back of my mind I wonder, will it happen again? The jurors deliberated for 7 hours, then recommended the death penalty. As the defendants were being led from the courtroom, Jason Befort's brother Mark said a sarcastic "Happy Birthday," followed by a swear word to Reginald Carr, who just turned 25. Prior to formal sentencing, Judge Clark informed the defendants of their right to allocution, meaning they could ask for mercy or apologize. They refused it on the advice of their attorneys. Then the judge formally sentenced them to be executed. In March 2004, the courts made a ruling on the wrongful death lawsuit launched by the families of the victims. The families claimed that the state was negligent because paperwork error allowed Reginald Carr to get out of prison early, thus paving the way for him and his brother to go on a deadly killing spree. It was further reported that the judge handling the case agreed with the families that the state did not do all it could for the victims. He suggested that the only issue left for a jury to decide was the amount of damages the state should pay. It was believed that the families stood a chance at receiving up to $500,000 each, totaling around $1.5 million. After 6 months, the state reached a settlement, deciding to pay out a total of $1.7 million to the relatives of the victims. The Associated Press reported in an October 2004 article that 3 of the families were to share $1.25 million in damages, whereas the 4th family would receive $450,000. The compensation would never lessen the excruciating emotional pain that the families endured on a daily basis, but it was a gesture that signified that the state made a tragic mistake. The following December, the families of the victims faced the unexpected. They learned that the Kansas Supreme Court found that the state's death penalty statute was unconstitutional. The law was found to be unfair to defendants because even if jurors considering aggravating and mitigating circumstances during sentencing believe arguments on both sides to be equal, the prosecution is still considered the winner. On July 25, 2014, the Kansas Supreme Court announced it had overturned the Carr death sentences on appeal. The court unanimously reversed 3 of each defendant's 4 capital convictions because jury instructions on sex crime-based capital murder were fatally erroneous, and 3 of the multiple homicide capital murder charges duplicated the first. The court ruled that the brothers were entitled to separate sentencing trials, as differentiation in the moral culpability of 2 defendants can cause a jury to show mercy to one while refusing to show mercy to the other. The Kansas Attorney General appealed the High Court's ruling to the U.S. Supreme Court. In January 2016, the United States Supreme Court, in an 8-1 ruling, reinstated the death sentences, overturning the Kansas Supreme Court, deciding that neither the jury instructions nor the combined sentencing proceedings violated the Constitution. The Kansas Supreme Court affirmed the death penalty for the brothers on January 21, 2022. The Carr brothers are incarcerated on death row at El Dorado Correctional Facility. Thanks for watching. I hope I earned your subscription today. Please consider liking the video on your way out. Stay safe.